November is almost here, and that means National Novel Writing Month, and I've assembled an expert panel to help first-timers and veterans alike survive. Hello and welcome again to the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Newsom. Thank you for joining us, whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app. It is almost November, which means it is almost time for National Novel Writing Month, or NaNoWriMo. And I have assembled a panel of nano experts to talk about what that is and how you can get involved if this is your first time, or maybe you're a veteran or an author and you've never participated in NaNoWriMo and you think about possibly doing it again. We're going to give you some tips and some helpful advice on how to do that. So now that I've introduced the podcast, we want to introduce our panelists. So we will begin, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. That's your clue, your cue, Abigail.
Oh, sorry. I'm Abigail Falanga. I'm a writer of science fiction and fantasy, mostly fantasy at the moment, and I've done NaNoWriMo forever. It's one of my favorite activities. It's great for training and getting words on the paper.
Okay. Next.
I'm Brianna Tibbetts. I am the author of The Knight in Battered Armor, which is an all-ages, fully illustrated fairy tale. I've also done some flash fiction, and I'm currently querying young adult contemporary fantasy that was originally a NaNoWriMo project. And this is going to be about my 7th or 8th time doing NaNoWriMo, and I'm going to be tackling an urban fantasy thriller this time around.
All right. Next.
Hi, my name's Grace Bridges, and I'm coming to you from New Zealand, where it is in fact tomorrow, hence the lovely morning sunlight here. That's right, I'm in the future. I call myself a geyser hunter, a cat herder, but I make my living as a freelance fiction editor. I got started with Nano in 2016, which is a fairly late start considering how long I've been writing. This year will be my 4th official Nano, but I've also written 4 or 5 other novels in similar timeframes, actually including the most recent one, which I finished in 9 days at 53,000 words. My main project that I'm working on now is the Earth Core series. It's set in real places in New Zealand, urban fantasy. Because our geothermal areas and legends were calling out for a fantasy story, right? So I'd done 2 or 3 of those as nanos, and actually the book 6 was the one I did in 9 days. So this year I'll be working on book 7, which is titled Firecat. It's about shapeshifters and time travelers and the usual geysers and dragons and such.
Okay, and as a way of introductions, let me just remind our viewers and listeners that I'm also an author. I've written and published 4 novels. They are supernatural thrillers under the pen name Oliver D. King. And I've only ever participated in Nano sideways, so I've never actually officially done a project. I've done a Nano from a sideways direction. I'll explain what I mean in a minute when we get into our conversation. All right, so let's get started on our panel here. So what is Nano? Brianna, will you take that question?
Yeah, so Nano is actually 2 things. So firstly, it's a challenge. The base idea is you write 50,000 words during the month of November. The original idea is to do 50,000 words in terms of a novel, but it doesn't have to be a novel. A lot of people will write a ton of short fiction, or they'll tackle it in other ways. So, but that's the core challenge, is 50,000 words during November. NaNoWriMo is also a nonprofit charity, though. They do a lot of outreach to libraries and schools and just communities working to encourage creativity, particularly with youth.
Okay, and who participates? Who can participate, Grace?
Oh, look, this thing is for everybody. If you're curious whether you can do it, if you want to try it, if you want to crack some things about speed writing for yourself, like, nobody's going to tell you how to do this, but even if you don't win and get to 50,000 words, chances are you'll have more than when you started, right? And that's always a good thing. So even if you think you can't do it, it's worth a go. It's even more important if you think it's impossible, because it might just break down some doors in your head regarding the speed you can work at. It did that for me.
And it might actually provide the opportunity for someone who's never written at all to give them an opportunity to try it. Even if they don't get the goal, at least they know they're surrounded by a whole lot of other writers that are writing at the same time. There's a support group that goes along with it as well. There's a community of people that are all writing their pants off, trying to reach their goal by the end of the month. So if you've never written a novel or anything, this might be a good chance to try it and surround yourself with that community. So Abigail, what are the rules? How do you participate?
Well, the rules are you announce your project, make up a project. If you have something in mind, go for it. And then every day of the month of November, you have to write at least 1,667 words and of that project. And of course, the rules are pretty malleable and you can change it if you want to, but it's a really good challenge. And theoretically, you're also supposed to finish your book in that month. That never works for me, but that's the idea.
So how do you win?
There's a way that you can load the entire novel or a substitute equal word count into the NaNoWriMo website itself, and it will verify that you won, and you get lots of winner goodies and stuff like that.
So, I mean, everybody can win, right? There's no certain amount of people who can win. If you accomplished a word count, then you win, basically.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I said, I've only ever participated sideways. And what I mean by that is I've used Nano as a launching point just to get momentum in order to finish my novel. And I've never actually finished or started anything in November. It has helped me get the momentum to finish a couple of my projects. And I might actually do that again. I'm in the middle of a project, so I might say, I'm going to push through this break and try to get as much possible during November. All right. So person who's new to it, never done it before and not sure what to expect. Let's talk about your best tips, your best advice to somebody who may be fairly new. What you have to say might be good to a seasoned veteran as well. We might all learn something from each other from this. So we'll start. We'll each one of us each one of you. I don't have any because I don't actually win Nano. I don't play the game right. We'll start and go around the screen, have each of you share a tip, and then we'll just keep going around till we run out of things to say. So we'll start with you, Abigail.
Okay, well, my tip that I've learned through a lot of trial and error is to start early. I always try to start a couple of weeks into October, just build up some steam. Make sure I have a routine of making sure I write at least 1,000 words every day, because that can help me get a good running start going into November, which I need. I'm pretty bad at having a consistent writing habit unless I'm really working at it hard. So if I want to run NaNoWriMo, I have to start early.
Okay. And hence the reason we're doing this here in the middle of October. And about a week and a half, 2 weeks or so before this is supposed to officially start, because I know the veterans prepare. They don't just go into a cold. They get ready before November starts. All right. So Brianna, what's your first tip?
So one of my tips is kind of on the same topic with consistency. There will inevitably be a time during November when there's a day that you just don't get words on the page. And I know for me, a lot of the time it feels like I broke my streak. Like, oh, I wrote 5 days in a row, but on that 6th day, it just didn't happen. And now, it's just, I broke my streak, but that's never the end of the world. You can always jump back in, and don't let that be the thing that, kicks you out or makes you think, oh, I'm just not going to get it this year, because even if for some reason that missed day or two means that you don't hit your 50,000, like Grace said earlier, that's still more words than you had before. You still accomplished something. You still put yourself in a better position in terms of the quantity of content you have, and you have something to work with, something to have moving forward. So don't ever give up just because you broke your streak.
Right. Very good. Grace?
Right. So the most important thing for me is to smash the distractions, whatever that means. And I don't know about you guys, but for me personally, the internet is my kryptonite. I cannot write on a computer that has the internet. It's just not possible. So for me, that means working usually on either a really old computer that loads websites so slowly it's not worth bothering, or I work on Alpha Smart Neo, which is like an electric typewriter with like 50 pages of memory, and I can type in there and transfer it to the computer afterwards. And then that's when I put my numbers into the Nano site to get all those good stats that they give you every day. I really like those stats. They tell you how much you have to do every day to finish in time, and you know, if you keep up this number, when will you get finished, and all of this stuff. It's really fun. So yeah, sorry, I don't have it on me. I would have shown you. I don't know where it is right now because I haven't used it for a few months. I'm a binge writer. I only write in nano type spurts, so I have to dig that up again. The last one I did on actually a little tiny old netbook that can't really do much internet, so that worked as well. Yeah, so
I want to ask you, go back to one thing you just mentioned about, y'all mentioned about putting the text into the website. I want to talk just a moment about that. Do you have to have an account? Do you log into the website?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So, first-time writers, veterans don't care anymore. First-time writers are always scared somebody is going to steal their work. Veteran writers realize that there are literally thousands of people out there writing millions of words every day. Nobody wants what you've written. They've got plenty of their own stuff to write. What do you know about the security as far as protecting your work that you've uploaded to the website? You don't know anything about that? Yes.
I think, firstly, it's important to know that you don't have to put up any actual text unless you want to verify your win. So like for the daily updates, you just put in a number. You say, I wrote this many words today. And that gives you all the cool stats and stuff. So you don't have to put anything in for that. At the end, if you want to verify your win, you do have to put in you have to paste in 50,000 words. But there is also software that can scramble that for you. And just we'll spit out a document with the same number of words, and you can just load that and get verified. Because nobody looks at it.
Right.
It doesn't matter what it is. It can be rubbish. But you know yourself.
It's not safe.
Whether you've done it or not, right?
Right.
Yeah,
And I'm just asking that question for the paranoid people who might be trying this for the first time,
Oh, yeah, you can scramble it, absolutely, if you want to do that.
Yeah, and you're basically just pasting everything you've written into a glorified word counter. That's all it's doing, is making sure your words are hitting that 50,000 mark. It's also worth noting, not every word processor counts words the same way.
Right.
So if you're really close, if you've got 49,998 words, it may process that as 50,000, or it may think it's 10 words less, or what have you. So it's always worth having just a little bit extra so that the website sees it as 50,000 words, just in case.
Right. Okay, well, let's go back around to Abigail. What else you got for us?
I don't know. Those were really good tips. Just to follow on with what Grace was saying, I also get very distracted by the internet and stuff. And what I do is I write by hand in a journal with pen, which cuts down on editing time. So, and I use the lorem ipsum generator I estimate the words I write, and then I use a lorem ipsum generator to produce that many words, and then I put that into the NaNoWriMo word counter.
Okay.
So,
Excellent. All right. Brianna?
So, Abigail already talked a little bit about momentum. And for me, one of the things that can really help build momentum early is there's kind of a separate challenge that a lot of people try and tackle during NaNoWriMo, which is to write 10,000 words in a day. And if you're the kind of person who has like, maybe you have your entire Saturday free, or just you have a day in your schedule where you can sit down and dedicate a whole day to just tackling that. That's a really kind of fun challenge to be able to say, hey, I did this. I did my 10,000 words. It's kind of a cool bragging rights thing. And if you do that early, like within the first week of Nano, you give yourself a lot of grace for if, a day later on, you just can't meet that word count, or even, obviously Thanksgiving is in November too. And a lot of people get really busy that weekend. Right. So if you can't tackle it during that weekend, you've given yourself a lot of wiggle room by tackling a larger word count earlier in the month. So a lot of times that helps me give myself a little bit of grace, because there's always something that comes up I'm not expecting.
Right. Grace, what else you got?
I just want to say on that topic, 10,000 words is hard to do. I think I've done it like twice in my career.
I may have done it once.
What I have done several times is 6, 7, maybe 8,000. The last 2,000 is really hard. I mean, we're talking about 8 to 10 hours sitting down writing, unless you're super fast. But, even if you do like a 5,000 word day, that's going to give you a good boost as well. So
Absolutely.
You have to get to 10,000. 5 is really awesome too, so don't worry about that. But yeah, 10 is hard. I've set out to do it a couple of times in the last year and I just didn't get there. But I still had 7,000, so I was happy. Right? So one thing that I want to say is it's important not to worry about perfect writing. That's not what this is for. Okay? You're not producing a finished literary work, and yet we hope you're not going to walk out and publish it on the 1st of December, because that is not a good idea.
I'm sure some people have.
Yeah, I hear that.
Probably.
But really, seriously, even if you write really clean, it's worth rereading. Definitely get some other people's input on it and all that sort of thing. First drafts are supposed to be messy, and Nano exists to help you get that first draft out there without thinking about it being perfect. So just get the story out there. Don't let yourself slow down for like excessive consideration of word choice. Just get the story down. Figure out what happens. You can fix all the flowery bits later.
All right, and that's good advice for any project that you're writing.
Right.
Even not outside of Nano, if you're writing a novel or a short story, the most challenging thing is just getting that first draft done. And once you get that done, once you get it written down, then you worry about getting the editing. And Nano is certainly a great time to try to hammer out that first draft. Abigail, what else you got?
Okay, so this is another one that's really subjective. This is something that works for me. I like to over-prepare my story. I'm more of a plotter. I like to have an outline in mind. I like to have the characters worked out, have some kind of idea of the map or the geography of the setting, and just have a lot of stuff in place beforehand before I start writing, because if I don't, I will inevitably run into a plot problem that will slow me down a lot, and that will just grind me to a halt. So for me, I say definitely have an outline and over prepare.
And any writer who has actually finished a book, anybody who's ever wanted to write a book knows that the writing of the book started long before the first words went down on the page. And you're not just going to show up November 1st and start writing a book having never thought about it. Absolutely. I'm with you. I'm a plotter too. I would definitely have an outline ready. All right, Brianna.
So kind of combining a little bit of what Grace and Abigail were talking about, so it's really, really one of the like biggest pieces of NaNoWriMo advice you'll hear is like, don't go back, don't edit. This is about getting words on the page. Like, leave it alone. It's supposed to be messy, and that's great. But that is such a consistent piece of advice that's I've known people who have realized really early on that they've got a big story problem, and it's going to prevent them from being able to write usable words moving forward. And so it is important to give yourself permission to go back and fix that kind of thing. Because if you identify this needs to change and you go back and change it, then you're going to be able to move forward with words that you may actually be able to use versus forcing a word count that you're going to have to scrap eventually because your pieces don't go together. And so that's a big thing that I think gives you a lot of freedom. If you give yourself the freedom to change that, even during NaNoWriMo, you will ultimately end up with a product that is much more usable at the end of the day. But yeah, don't worry about your typos. But if there's a story problem that you identify, absolutely give yourself the freedom to fix it. Don't feel like you have to keep writing just because you got to get the words on the page.
One of the things I always do in my first drafts, along those same lines, and like I said, if Nano is about trying to get words on the page and you don't want to slow down your momentum to stop, if you have a story issue and you have in mind a way to fix it, simply just go back and drop in some notes. Say, and here I'm going to change this to this. Things to help you remember later on when you're going back and doing your second draft, the changes that you wanted to make. And then draw a line and say, from this point on, I'm going to write the story this way with these changes in mind and the correct changes on the back end of it. I do that in my first drafts all the time. Probably would be a good idea with Nano as well. Like you said, give yourself permission to change your story on the fly.
And it's important, especially for because you guys were talking about being plotters. I'm kind of right in the middle. I call myself a plotzer. So if you're more of a pantser and you're making it up as you go, you're very likely to run into oh wait, this isn't going to work unless I change this. And so you have to be able to give yourself permission to change it, because if you don't, you're just going to burn yourself out writing words you won't use.
Right, absolutely. All right, Grace, what else?
Right, okay, this is the thing that is most important revelation, I suppose, from Nano. If you sit down and you find yourself staring at a blank page, you find yourself stuck, it's important that you stop that. Just stop it by any means possible. Find a strategy to move ahead. Whatever methods you might have learned about or read about, want to try, just whatever that means. For me, that means scribbling down a couple of ideas on scrap paper for the scene. I mean, I am a planner, so I know what's happening in the scene in general, like in a one-sentence summary, but I tend to break it down even further. And I was helping a friend with this once because she was stuck on a scene, and the first thing she wrote down was, they parked the car. And I'm like, yeah, that's the first thing you got to write in that scene. So that's your first 100 words probably done with that, because you can imagine they're talking as they do it. There's a bit of scenery, whatever. So they're parking the car is literally the first scribble in that scene. And so it's about the first thing and then the next thing and the next thing. And that was what really cracked it for me, to get unstuck, because then I always know what's coming roughly. The one I did last year, I didn't really know what the climax was going to be. I just called it The Thing. And it's like, I knew the effects of the thing. I knew that what effects it would have on the characters. I knew what had to happen at the end of it, but I did not know what the thing was. And I just kept writing until the very day of writing that scene, and then the thing came to me. But I knew its function in the story. I just didn't know what it was. And that's fine, because I came up with it on the spot, and that feels like being a bit of a pantser. So that was fun. It was quite literally my first Nano, well, unofficially, that cracked open my personal strategy, which works for me. And it's going to be different for everyone. So don't go thinking that my method's going to be the same. It's not. I mean, try it. Yeah, go look for methods that might work for you. So I did my first one in October 2016. I did 2 back-to-back. I did October and November, my first 2 Earth Core books. And I was sitting there and I'm like, I have to do these 1,700 words and I'm stuck. What do I do? So I grabbed at a strategy and another one. I don't think it was the first one that I tried, but I eventually came on this strategy that would let me win Nano, get the 50,000 in 1 month. And yeah, I pretty soon struck gold in terms of my own productivity. Nano made me learn how to get unblocked in a way that has worked for me every time since, including the 9-day novel. So,
right.
Go for the gold.
That reminds me of some advice I heard the filmmaker Joss Whedon give about how he stayed so prolific as far as screenwriting. And his advice was to write what's hot. So in terms of the story, if you're, and this really only works if you're a plotter and you have an idea of what the overall story is going to be. If you get stuck, don't be afraid to jot down a few filler sentences about what you think should happen there, and then move forward to another scene and write what's hot, write what's on your mind, write it while it's hot. And then once you get, then go back and start filling in all of those things that you skipped because by the time you come back, that scene, you may have worked out what you wanted to have happen, and that may be hot, and you'll be able to write it. And that seems very similar to what you were saying, write down in order the basics, and eventually you'll get unblocked as you go through.
You don't have to skip it. You see, once I write down those basic scribbles,
right,
I then know how to continue with that scene. I don't have to skip it.
right.
I mean, some people can write non-linearly. You can skip ahead and write a scene that excites you. I did that once, and then I had to go back and write all the bits that were slightly less interesting, and that was not fun. So I don't do that anymore. But
Well, that's it. That's
by all means.
Yeah, that's exactly what Joss Whedon does. He writes all the fun stuff first and goes back and writes the boring stuff later. He said, it
Hopefully
works
there
for
is
him.
no boring stuff, right? We want to skip that if it's boring.
You want to make the boring stuff interesting. Okay, so back around to Abigail, who's been having fun rearranging her space.
Fun.
What else you have for us?
I have some dirty tricks.
Okay, give us the dirty tricks.
Yeah, one of them is to have quick meals available that you can grab and just eat quickly. So like cook extra stuff, put it in the freezer, and there you go.
Is that it? Is that it?
That's it.
That you said tricks.
Okay, well, how about
More than one.
leftover Halloween candy? That's another one.
Yeah, give you that nice sugar rush.
Yeah.
All right, Brianna, what else you got?
I would really encourage, especially new writers, to find community for NaNoWriMo. If in normal years, so obviously there's not a whole lot of gathering in person going on right now, although some existing NaNoWriMo communities are looking for ways around that using methods like Zoom. But most of the time you'll find local groups on the NaNoWriMo website that are associated with your city. So they'll like get together at Starbucks or other local coffee shops, libraries, that sort of thing, to just gather together and write. And so that's a good way to meet other writers in your area, to meet other people who are accepting the challenge that is NaNoWriMo. So it's a very shared experience sort of thing. And so it's a way to encourage each other. And those groups exist online, even if they aren't able to meet in person. And so especially if you're like, maybe you really want to tackle NaNoWriMo for the first time and you're, the only one of your friends that's going to try it, that's a really good way to find other people who are interested, so you don't feel like you're doing it in kind of an isolated bubble.
All right, excellent. Grace, did you have anything else?
I'm thinking now, it's kind of related to my other point about, killing the distractions, but while you're writing, do not under any circumstances go off and research names for your character or what your location is like, or, anything that you have to look up if it's historical or whatever. Just pop it in square brackets. I have gone through entire novels naming characters A, B, C, D, E. Square brackets.
I've done a couple that way.
And pick a letter for each person, and then you can go back and fix it later, because I don't know exactly the science behind it, but I think that writing, you need to get in a flow, and if you stop to look up something that is more analytical, then you get out of that creative flow. It's almost like a left-right brain thing. You don't want to dump research into the middle of your writing flow. So really just don't research till you're done. You can fix that later, and it won't take a second with find and replace if it's a name even. But yeah, just don't stop for things like that. Pop in your square brackets, put in roughly what you want to put, what you think it might be, and just keep going. Don't stop. And
if I could add to that, Grace, you can also, we always told when developing characters, give them a hook and an eye patch. So I mean, they have some defining characteristic that stands out and implants itself in their brain. There's something that the reader can latch on to identify one character from another character, so that they don't all start to sound the same or look the same in the reader's head. So you could, like, I've heard of people like giving that one word description for the thing that they've got. Like if they do have an eye patch, just call him eye patch. Right. As you're writing. And it helps you to focus on the thing that sets them apart from everybody else before you name them. So you're always remembering, oh, this is eye patch that I'm writing. Right. He's going to act this way, or this is peg leg that I'm writing. He's going to write this way. I don't know why I'm talking about pirates, but you get the idea. Pirates are cool. All right. So anything else? Have we left off anything in regards to Nano that you have written down that you wanted to say?
I think one thing that I think is just a really kind of easy thing to do, but easy thing to overlook, is it's a lot of people think like, oh, I need to sit down and have my, writing time and I got to dedicate an hour to it. If you like work full time or you're in school or whatever, take the 15 minutes where you can find them. Like don't be afraid to put down words in a short amount of time, because if you're always just kind of ignoring those little moments in favor of the bigger moments, you're missing out on a lot of time you could be putting words on the page. And sometimes those little moments are going to be all you have. So if that's all you have, 200 words or 300 words in 15 minutes is better than no words at all if that's all you have for the day. So definitely give yourself permission to take advantage of the small moments.
Yeah, I call that writing in the cracks.
Yeah.
Writing in the cracks. Anything else?
I found that worked really well for my method of scribbling down, little things that happen within the scene. They're almost like sub points of a scene. And one of those might be 100 or 200 words. And you can definitely finish one of those in 10 or 15 minutes. And then you can leave it and go do something else, come back and do the next one. It's like having these little segments and you can go, yep, I finished that one. And then you can start with the next one. I find that really, really useful.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start wrapping this up. Unless anybody's got another tip they want to share that we haven't covered.
Well, I had a couple more, but
go ahead, share them.
One thing that has worked for me is to make my word count actually a little higher than 50,000 words, because that makes me more dedicated. And my other dirty trick is to use everything. So if you make notes or you have to flesh out a scene and you're not going to keep it anyway, just keep it. Just put it in the word count. It counts. And that helps to bump up the word count. It encourages me, at least, to actually see the words that I'm working on, even if they're not going to be in the finished novel. To see them mounting up really helps me.
Okay. Any other tips? All right, so let's wrap this up. I'm going to ask all of you, and we'll start with Grace this time. You are sitting down in front of someone who has never participated in Nano, and they're staring at November and they're freaking out and they don't know what to do. What is the one piece of advice you're going to give them? The one piece of wisdom from somebody who has done it for years and years and years. What would you say?
Don't panic. There is a method that you can use that will work for you. Just try a few things that you find online and give it a go. And you're still going to end up with more words than you had, even if you stop on the first day. So, I mean, don't stop on the first day, but go for it.
Right. Brianna, what would you tell them?
If you're expecting to jump into NaNoWriMo and end up with perfection on the page, you're the only one who's expecting that of you. So give yourself permission to just put the words on the page. The whole process of editing is a completely different monster from NaNoWriMo. Don't worry about it. Put the words on the page, and if it doesn't work, you can figure that out later. But yeah, it's all about the word count. It's all about getting that. For me, especially, it's about just getting that first draft out, and then you get to go back and take that and kind of recraft it in the perfect image later on. To start with, it's all about kind of fleshing out your idea and just making it work. So
give yourself permission to let it be ugly.
Yes.
All right. So Abigail, what would you tell them?
It's okay to have grace days. Not that grace, but but days when when you don't write, or when you write only a little bit, or when you write complete garbage and you're going to get rid of it. It's okay to have days like that. During the day, the whole month, you can shoot for writing almost 2,000 words every day. That's great. But if you don't, that's fine too. Just don't have too many of them.
Yeah, then you'll never reach your 50,000. Mm-hmm. All right. Thank you so much for joining me on this panel. Let's end by letting you take turns telling our viewers and our listeners how they can find out a little bit more about you and your works, the things you've written, and where they can get in contact with you. Start with Abigail.
Probably the best place to find me is on Facebook. I have a Facebook author page, which is probably, I don't know, just look up Abigail Falanga author and you should see me. And My website is terrible, so yeah. Go to
So
Facebook.
don't go to the website. All right, Brianna?
If you're looking for my works, especially, my website's going to be the best place to start. That's just BriannaTibbetts.com. And you'll find links to all of my flash fiction if you're interested in that. And there's some information about what I'm working on and the Knight in Battered Armor as well. And then if you want to just connect with me on social media, I'm Valiant Ginger on Instagram, The Valiant Ginger on Facebook. That's for my author page. And then Ginger Time Lord on Twitter.
Excellent. All right, Grace?
You can find me at www.gracebridges.kiwi or search for Grace Bridges on Amazon. Do put quotes around my name though, or you might find a bunch of devotionals or means of crossing rivers, because it's going to happen, right? So currently I have the Earth Course series in Kindle Unlimited, so if you're a subscriber, you can read it there. If you check out the front page of my website, I think there's still a free story on there from the Earth Course series. I'd be super pleased if you take a look at that.
All right, excellent. And if anybody wanted to find out more about the books that I've written under the pen name Oliver D. King, that's oliverdking.com. All right, so thank you all for watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app. Thank you to Abigail, Brianna, and Grace for joining me today on this podcast, and we will see you next time. This has been the Christian Arts and Entertainment Podcast with author, musician, and worship pastor Kevin Newsom. Thank you for joining us today, for your comments, and for subscribing. See you next time.